The 1970s broke horror wide open. Studios had zero rules, directors had zero limits, and audiences had zero idea what was coming. This decade gave us films so disturbing that theaters handed out vomit bags, priests performed exorcisms on traumatized viewers, and entire countries banned movies for decades. Forget your modern jump scares. These 15 films still crawl under your skin 50 years later. Number 15. When a Stranger Calls, 1979. The first 12 minutes of this film are considered the most terrifying opening sequence in horror history, and everything after that is just gravy. Carol Kane plays a babysitter who keeps receiving creepy phone calls asking if she has checked the children. The twist that follows has been copied by every slasher movie since, but nothing matches the raw dread of the original. Director Fred Walton understood something crucial about fear. You do not need buckets of blood when you have a telephone, darkness, and silence working against your protagonist. The film was made on a shoestring budget after Walton first shot the concept as a short film that terrified festival audiences so completely that Columbia Pictures demanded a feature version. Critics at the time called it a masterclass in tension building. Roger Ebert praised the opening act, while admitting the middle section dragged, but that opening became the blueprint for every babysitter thriller that followed. The famous line about the calls coming from inside the house entered the cultural lexicon immediately. It spawned urban legends that parents still tell their teenage daughters before leaving for date night. Kane delivers a performance of such genuine terror that you forget you are watching a movie. The film proves that horror works best when it exploits everyday anxieties. Phones were supposed to be safe. Babysitting was supposed to be boring. Walton shattered both assumptions in under 15 minutes. Number 14. The Hills Have Eyes, 1977. Wes Craven made this movie with money he scraped together after Last House on the Left, proved that audiences crave visceral, uncompromising horror. A wholesome American family breaks down in the Nevada desert and discovers a clan of cannibalistic mutants living in the hills. What follows is 90 minutes of survival horror so intense that Craven himself admitted he went too far in several scenes. The original cut was so brutal that the MPAA demanded extensive trims before granting any rating at all. The genius of this film lies in its class warfare subtext. The clean suburban family represents everything comfortable about American life. The hill dwellers represent everything America abandoned and forgot. Craven forces both groups into a death match where morality becomes irrelevant and survival becomes everything. Michael Berryman became an instant horror icon with his portrayal of Pluto, his distinctive appearance lending authenticity to the terror. The film cost only $230,000, but grossed over $25 million worldwide. Horror fans and critics eventually recognized what mainstream audiences felt in their guts from the start. This movie hurts to watch in the best possible way. It does not let you look away. It does not offer false hope. It suggests that civilization is a thin veneer, and that given the right circumstances, any family might become exactly what they fear most. That message still resonates in an era where societal collapse feels perpetually imminent. Number 13. Black Christmas, 1974. 4 years before Michael Myers stalked Haddonfield, a sorority house in Canada became the hunting ground for an unseen killer, making obscene phone calls and murdering young women one by one. Director Bob Clark created the slasher template that John Carpenter would perfect, but Clark never received proper credit until decades later. The film flopped on initial release because distributors had no idea how to market something this strange and this brutal. The killer in Black Christmas is never fully revealed. You see glimpses of an eye, hear disturbing phone calls mixing childlike voices with violent threats, but the identity remains ambiguous even after the credits roll. This choice terrified 1974 audiences who expected tidy resolutions. Clark understood that the unknown is always scarier than the revealed monster. Margot Kidder delivers a wonderfully sardonic performance as the hard-drinking Barb, while Olivia Hussey anchors the film as the final girl before that term even existed. The film was so ahead of its time that it took 30 years for horror scholars to properly acknowledge its influence on everything from Halloween to Scream. Clark himself pitched a sequel to Carpenter that would have followed the same killer, but Carpenter took the concept and made his own masterpiece instead. Black Christmas remains the scariest Christmas movie ever made, and every December, horror fans return to it like a twisted holiday tradition that refuses to die. Number 12, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1978. This remake of the 1956 classic took Cold War paranoia and transformed it into something far more personal and far more horrifying. Donald Sutherland plays a San Francisco health inspector who slowly realizes that alien pods are replacing human beings with emotionless duplicates while they sleep. Director Philip Kaufman created an atmosphere of creeping dread that builds until the most devastating ending in science fiction horror history. The film features one of cinema's most disturbing images, a half-formed human-dog hybrid that appears briefly but burns itself into your memory permanently. Kaufman populates his San Francisco with odd characters and strange behaviors from the very first frame, making you question whether the invasion has already begun before our hero notices anything wrong. The supporting cast includes Jeff Goldblum, Brooke Adams, Veronica Cartwright, and Leonard Nimoy in a role that weaponizes his Spock persona brilliantly. Critics in 1978 recognized immediately that this remake had surpassed its predecessor. The paranoia of the original reflected fears about communism, but this version reflects something universal: the terror of losing yourself. The horror of watching the people you love become strangers who wear familiar faces but contain nothing human inside. That final shot of Sutherland pointing and screaming has become one of horror's most iconic moments, a perfect encapsulation of despair that requires no dialogue and offers no hope whatsoever. Number 11. Dawn of the Dead, 1978. George Romero returned to the zombie apocalypse he created a decade earlier and delivered a sequel that many consider superior to Night of the Living Dead. 4 survivors take refuge in a shopping mall as society crumbles around them. What sounds like pure escapist entertainment becomes a savage satire of American consumerism that still hits harder than any modern social commentary. The film was so gory that Romero released it without an MPAA rating to avoid the dreaded X classification. Tom Savini's special effects pushed practical gore to new extremes, with exploding heads and disembowelments that shocked audiences who thought they had seen everything. Romero shot in a real Pennsylvania mall during off hours, giving the film an eerie authenticity that studio backlots could never replicate. The zombies wandering through department stores on pure muscle memory provided the film's most chilling commentary on mindless consumption. Internationally, the film became a phenomenon. Italian horror master Dario Argento helped produce and edited his own cut for European markets. Japan embraced it as a cult classic. The United Kingdom initially banned it entirely. Dawn of the Dead earned over $55 million against a budget of just over $500,000, proving that horror audiences would support ambitious, intelligent filmmaking. Every zombie movie and television show that followed exists in its shadow. The Walking Dead owes its entire existence to what Romero accomplished in that mall. Number 10. Carrie, 1976. Brian De Palma took Stephen King's debut novel and crafted the definitive adaptation that launched 2 legendary careers simultaneously. Sissy Spacek plays Carrie White, a sheltered teenager with telekinetic powers who suffers relentless bullying until prom night delivers her ultimate revenge. The film earned Spacek an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress, an almost unheard-of achievement for horror at the time. Piper Laurie matches Spacek scene for scene as Carrie's fanatically religious mother, earning her own Oscar nomination for a performance so committed that crew members found her genuinely unsettling on set. De Palma employs split screens, slow motion, and operatic staging that transforms the prom massacre into something simultaneously beautiful and horrifying. The bucket of pig blood has become cinema's most iconic humiliation, referenced and parodied countless times, but never equaled. The film's final jump scare allegedly caused heart attacks in early screenings. Audience members screamed so loudly that theaters posted warnings. United Artists initially doubted the project would find an audience, but Carrie earned over $33 million domestically and established King as the most bankable name in horror literature. Every high school revenge fantasy that followed borrowed from Carrie's template. Every telekinesis movie exists because this one proved the concept worked. SpaceX Performance remains a devastating portrait of adolescent suffering that transcends genre entirely. Number 9, Suspiria, 1977. Italian director Dario Argento created what he called the most beautiful nightmare ever filmed, and 5 decades later, nobody has successfully argued otherwise. An American ballet student arrives at a prestigious German dance academy and discovers that the school conceals a coven of ancient witches. The plot matters far less than the overwhelming sensory experience Argento creates through color, sound, and imagery. The film was shot using an outdated Technicolor process that Argento demanded specifically because it produced colors more vivid than modern film stock could achieve. Reds pulse like arterial blood. Blues glow with supernatural intensity. Every frame looks like a moving painting created by a disturbed genius. The score by Italian prog rock band Goblin assaults viewers from the opening moments with pounding drums, shrieking voices, and synthesizers that drill directly into your nervous system. Suspiria contains 2 of the most elaborate death sequences ever filmed, taking several days each to shoot, and requiring effects that pushed 1970s technology to its limits. The film was banned, censored, or cut in virtually every country that released it, yet became a massive international success that established Argento as horror's premier visual stylist. Modern directors from Guillermo del Toro to Nicola Winding Refn cited as essential viewing. The 2018 remake by Luca Guadagnino paid homage while wisely not attempting to replicate its hallucinatory power. Some nightmares cannot be duplicated. Number 8. Don't Look Now, 1973. Nicholas Roeg made a ghost story that functions equally well as a meditation on grief, marriage, and the treachery of perception. Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie play parents mourning their drowned daughter, who travel to Venice, where the husband begins seeing a small figure in a red coat, identical to what their daughter wore when she died. The film builds toward a conclusion so shocking that audiences in 1973 sat in stunned silence as credits rolled. Roeg's editing fragments time throughout the film, cutting between past, present, and possible futures in ways that disorient viewers while reinforcing the protagonist's psychological deterioration. Venice becomes a labyrinth of decay and hidden menace, its beauty masking something rotten underneath. The famous love scene between Sutherland and Christie remains one of cinema's most intimate and realistic portrayals of married intimacy, so convincing that rumors persisted for years about whether it was simulated. Critics initially dismissed the film as pretentious art house fare dressed in horror clothing, but subsequent decades have elevated it to masterpiece status. Martin Scorsese calls it one of his favorite films. Danny Boyle credits it as a primary influence on his visual style. The red coat has become horror's most potent symbol of lost innocence, appearing in homages across 5 decades of filmmaking. Don't Look Now proves that horror can operate as high art without sacrificing a single genuine scare. Number 7, The Wicker Man, 1973. A devoutly Christian police sergeant travels to a remote Scottish island to investigate a missing girl and discovers a pagan community that practices ancient rituals with disturbing enthusiasm. Christopher Lee considered this his finest performance, playing the charismatic Lord Summerisle with aristocratic menace that never tips into obvious villainy. The film subverts every expectation about how these investigations typically proceed in horror cinema. Director Robin Hardy and screenwriter Anthony Schaffer created something genuinely unique, a musical horror film where the songs actually matter to the plot and theme. The villagers sing folk songs about fertility, rebirth, and sacrifice, while the sergeant grows increasingly horrified by their casual rejection of Christian morality. Lee reportedly worked for free because he believed so strongly in the material after studios showed no interest in financing such an unconventional project. The original studio butchered the film upon release, cutting crucial scenes and pairing it with a random Nicola Roeg film as a double feature. Hardy spent decades trying to restore his vision. Despite this sabotage, The Wicker Man developed a devoted cult, following that recognized its intelligence and craftsmanship. The final image has been called the most haunting conclusion in British horror history. The 2006 remake with Nicolas Cage became an unintentional comedy that only highlighted how perfectly the original balanced tone. Some films simply cannot be remade because their magic resists duplication entirely. Number 6. The Omen, 1976. What if your adopted son was literally the Antichrist? Gregory Peck plays an American diplomat who slowly realizes that his 5-year-old boy, Damien, may be the biblical beast destined to bring about Armageddon. The film treats its ridiculous premise with deadly seriousness, and somehow that commitment makes everything work beautifully. Director Richard Donner staged death sequences so elaborate and so memorable that they spawned an entire subgenre of creative kills in horror cinema. A photographer gets decapitated by a sheet of glass in a scene that took weeks to design and execute. A priest gets impaled by a church lightning rod. Each death arrives with operatic grandiosity that transforms grotesque violence into something almost elegant. Jerry Goldsmith's Oscar-winning score uses Latin chanting that sounds authentically demonic, establishing the musical template for every satanic thriller that followed. The production was allegedly cursed. A plane-carrying screenwriter, David Seltzer, was struck by lightning. Another plane-carrying Gregory Peck suffered the same fate on a separate flight. An animal handler was killed by lions days after working on the film. A restaurant where producers were dining was bombed by the IRA. These stories fueled publicity that helped The Omen gross over $60 million domestically against a small budget. The film spawned 3 theatrical sequels and a television series, but nothing matched the original's perfect balance of prestige filmmaking and unholy terror. In number 5, Alien, 1979. Ridley Scott pitched it as Jaws in space, but what emerged was far more disturbing than any creature feature that came before. The crew of a commercial space vessel responds to a distress signal and inadvertently brings aboard a perfect killing organism that hunts them through claustrophobic corridors. The film transformed science fiction horror and created one of cinema's most enduring monsters. Swiss artist H.R. Giger designed the xenomorph based on his nightmarish biomechanical paintings, creating a creature that looked genuinely alien rather than just a man in a rubber suit. The production pushed the design so far that certain countries censored or banned the film purely based on the creature's disturbing implications. Sigourney Weaver became an instant star as Ripley, delivering a performance that shattered expectations about how women could function in action horror. She was not the victim. She was the survivor. The famous chest-bursting scene remains one of cinema's most shocking moments. Scott deliberately did not tell the cast exactly what would happen, capturing genuine horror on their faces as John Hurt convulsed and a creature exploded from his torso, spraying real animal entrails across the set. Veronica Cartwright fainted. Yaphet Kotto stumbled backward in shock. That authenticity translates directly to the screen. Alien cost $11 million and earned over $180 million worldwide. It launched a franchise that continues today, but Scott's original remains the purest distillation of cosmic horror ever committed to celluloid. Number 4, Jaws, 1975. Steven Spielberg's mechanical shark barely worked during production. The young director was forced to hide his monster, showing only glimpses while letting audience imagination fill the gaps. This technical disaster created the most terrifying creature in film history, precisely because you almost never see it clearly. Spielberg turned limitation into legend. The film invented the summer blockbuster and changed how movies were marketed and released forever. Universal spent unprecedented amounts on television advertising and opened the film simultaneously in hundreds of theaters rather than the gradual rollout that was industry standard. Audiences lined up around blocks. Beach attendance dropped measurably that summer as people genuinely feared entering the ocean. Marine biologists report that Jaws created lasting damage to shark populations as fear transformed into extermination campaigns. John Williams composed a score so effective that 2 notes can induce anxiety in anyone who has seen the film. Roy Scheider, Richard Dreyfuss, and Robert Shaw delivered performances that elevated pulpy material into genuine drama. Shaw's Indianapolis monologue, largely improvised on set, remains one of cinema's greatest scenes. Jaws earned over $470 million globally against a production budget of $9 million. It won 3 Academy Awards and should have won Best Picture. Every monster movie since exists in conversation with what Spielberg accomplished here. He did not just make a horror film, he rewrote the rules of cinema itself. Number 3, Halloween, 1978. John Carpenter made this film for $300,000, shot it in 20 days, and created the template that every slasher film has followed for nearly 50 years. Michael Myers escapes a psychiatric facility and returns to his hometown on Halloween night to continue the killing spree he began as a child. The simplicity of the premise belies the sophistication of its execution. Carpenter composed the iconic piano theme himself because he could not afford a professional composer. Those few synthesizer notes have become horror's most recognizable musical signature, instantly evoking dread in anyone who has ever seen the film. The director also served as cinematographer under a pseudonym, using widescreen framing that constantly suggests danger lurking at the edges of the frame. Michael Myers occupies negative space like no villain before or since, appearing in backgrounds and doorways where your eye almost misses him. Jamie Lee Curtis became a star in her first film role, establishing the final girl archetype that would define slasher cinema. Donald Pleasance provides gravitas as the psychiatrist who knows exactly how dangerous Michael truly is. Halloween earned $70 million globally and launched a franchise that continues today with diminishing returns. No sequel has matched the original's stripped-down efficiency. Carpenter proved that horror does not require gore, does not require elaborate mythology, does not require anything except craft, patience, and a willingness to let silence build until audiences cannot bear the tension another second. Number 2. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. Tobe Hooper made this film in brutal Texas heat with a crew of amateurs, almost no money, and a commitment to authenticity that bordered on madness. 5 young people encounter a family of cannibalistic slaughterhouse workers, and what follows is 90 minutes of unrelenting terror that feels less like a movie than a documentary from hell. The film was marketed as based on a true story, and audiences believed it completely. The production conditions were genuinely nightmarish. Temperatures inside the house set exceeded 100 degrees. Real animal blood and entrails decorated the sets. Actors wore the same sweat-soaked clothes for weeks without washing them. Gunnar Hansen, who played Leatherface, became so dehydrated and exhausted that he actually nicked Marilyn Burns with his chainsaw during the dinner scene. Her terror was absolutely real because everyone on set had lost grip on where performance ended and genuine suffering began. Despite containing almost no on-screen gore, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was banned outright in multiple countries for decades. The British Board of Film Classification rejected it repeatedly until 1999. Australia banned it until 1984, yet word of mouth transformed it into one of the most profitable independent films ever made. Critics who initially dismissed it as exploitation eventually recognized its artistry. Cinematographer Daniel Pearl created images of such sweaty, dusty, sun-baked authenticity that you can almost smell the death through the screen. This film does not just scare you, it assaults you. Number 1. The Exorcist, 1973. William Friedkin adapted William Peter Blatty's novel about a young girl possessed by a demon and created the most terrifying film ever made. That is not hyperbole. Nearly every credible poll of horror critics, filmmakers, and audiences places The Exorcist at the top, and 50 years of competition has not dislodged it. This film broke something in the culture that has never fully healed. Warner Brothers invested $10 million, an enormous sum for 1973, and Friedkin pushed the production to extremes that would be illegal today. He refrigerated the bedroom set so cold that actors' breath was visible, genuinely making Linda Blair and Ellen Burstyn suffer on camera. He fired guns without warning to capture authentic startled reactions. He slapped a real priest before emotional scenes. The possession makeup took hours to apply daily, and left Blair with lasting spinal injuries from the harness work. Theaters reported audiences vomiting, fainting, and fleeing in terror. Ambulances were stationed outside cinemas in major cities. Religious organizations protested while simultaneously sending troubled parishioners to see it, believing the film accurately depicted demonic forces. The Exorcist earned over $440 million globally and received 10 Academy Award nominations, winning 2. It was the first horror film nominated for Best Picture. Jason Miller, Max von Sydow, and Linda Blair delivered performances that transcended genre completely. The crucifix scene, the head rotation, the spider walk, the projectile vomiting. These images have never lost their power to disturb because Friedkin shot them with absolute conviction that he was documenting something real. The 1970s proved that horror could be art, commerce, and genuine cultural disruption simultaneously. These 15 films changed how studios viewed the genre and changed how audiences experienced fear. Drop a comment telling me which film scarred you the most and which one you think deserves its reputation least. Here's the real question, though. With all our modern technology and unlimited budgets, why has no film in 50 years managed to terrify audiences the way these did? Is it possible we have simply lost the ability to make movies this dangerous?